afternoon, Southern California. You are listening to In the Trenches. I am Garrett Schwartz. With me, as always, is Jeffrey Dubrov. And man, oh man, the summer is flying by. Only about one more month until we're back in school. That means one more month till we're really talking some football. But until then, lots of NBA to talk about. But first, Jeffrey, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Yourself?
I'm doing great. So yeah, since actually it's been 2 weeks since I've been on the air. Jeffrey took over the show last week. There was a fire drill in the middle of the show. No surprise, he couldn't hold down the fort in my absence. But anyway, Mark Cuban coming out yesterday, quote, "If we, as in the Dallas Mavericks, were in the East, we would not be rebuilding. We'd be handling things completely different. I think I'm going to kidnap Commissioner Adam Silver and not let him out until he moves us to the Eastern Conference." And obviously Mark Cuban coming out with some heated words in response to what we've been seeing in the NBA offseason so far. Obviously the two most notable moves, Jimmy Butler going from the Chicago Bulls to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and also Paul George being traded from the Pacers to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Two huge moves. And now when you're looking, not just at the NBA as a whole, obviously you have some parity issues. You have kind of the Cavs and the Warriors, and then there's everyone else. But now if you're just kind of comparing the conferences, you're like, whoa. If you look at the top 16 scorers in points per game last season, 12 of them are in the Western Conference, only 4 in the East. So me and Jeffrey kind of got to talking, and we basically said, what would happen if me and you were running the league? What happens if In the Trenches takes over the NBA front office? Because quite frankly, we think there's 3 things that you could do right now that would fix the NBA, not just short term, but long term. Jeffrey, do you want to kick us off again? This is 3 things if In the Trenches takes over the NBA front office. How do we fix the NBA right now?
Yeah, you really touched upon it. The disparity now between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference is not only, it's always been a large difference between the talent of the overall teams that we've seen for the past 10, 15 years, we said earlier before the show. And now with these moves of Jimmy Butler gone, Paul George gone, that gap only widens. And you can say, Gordon Hayward's going to Boston. You said it earlier. Gordon Hayward's by points per game, not a top 25 scorer. So yeah, you're going to gain a player like Gordon Hayward, but that doesn't make up for the losses of Jimmy Butler or Paul George. So I think that comes to our first move, if you and I were co-running the league, would be to get rid of this conference system. This was the first time in I think about 5 years that for once normally you see the 8th seed in the East have a below 500 record. This was the first year at least that the 8th seed in the West and the 8th seed in the East had a 41-41 record. So at least there's something there. But get rid of these conferences. For the reason that there's a team in the West is going to have to battle through such a hard road because the disparity is so big. So why give a team, let's not say San Antonio or Golden State, but let's say a team like the Clippers or Houston. Why have them play MVP? Why does Houston need to play MVP Russell Westbrook to start the season when if they were playing a combined league tournament, they'd be playing a Milwaukee or a Indiana or an Atlanta?
And I think that this move, again, getting rid of the conferences and just making it 1 through 16 in the NBA playoffs and seeding them that way, would not only make the game better, but before we talk about how it could change things, I'm hard-pressed as to why these conferences exist in the first place. Your first argument is, okay, maybe geographically it makes sense, right? We're going to make it easier for our players to play more division games and, make the back-to-backs. No, it doesn't even make sense. Like, you got Memphis and New Orleans in the West. And then you got Oklahoma City in the same division as Portland. So they're flying halfway across the country for, the NBA, 5 or 6 division games a year.
The NBA didn't account for the fact that when Seattle left Oklahoma City, they were no longer going to be geographically northwest.
Here's the really scary thing, Jeffrey. So not only this year are we kind of saying there's some serious parity in the East and the West, but what happens if, like everyone's been saying, LeBron James moves out west next year? If LeBron James goes, by the way, I don't know if you've been listening. There's a little bit of chatter that LeBron could be looking at the Spurs, but whatever. A little bit more likely, chasing his movie career with the Lakers. If LeBron James goes out west, you got a nightmare in the NBA. Your best player in the East is now probably Kyrie Irving or, again, Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward, not even a top 25 points per game scorer in the NBA last season. So if I'm the NBA, I need to be proactive about this. I need to say, let's blow up the conference system. Again, geographically, it doesn't even make sense. And we need to avoid the scenario in which LeBron James goes out west because, again, if you do kind of fix this and it goes to 1-16 seeding, no matter what conference LeBron is in, you're going to have LeBron James playing the Warriors in the finals.
If it were to happen and the conferences were blown up and you now have the top 16 teams playing in the NBA playoffs, and LeBron goes west, could it be attributed to the fact that LeBron has completely revolutionized the NBA? Because in a sense that now, the way we're putting it is that if LeBron goes west and the conferences are blown up, it simply means that LeBron James is too good, and when he leaves his conference, that conference is in just complete shambles, that the overall league needs an adjustment because of one player.
So your argument per se is LeBron James could be the reason for these NBA conference parity problems. That's what you're posing?
I think LeBron is that important. LeBron is the remaining sense of piece of pride that the Eastern Conference can take.
So I think you could make the case that the East is the way it is because no one wants to battle LeBron in the East, but I think you could say the same thing for the Warriors. Why would players now be flocking to the West when you know realistically you have almost no shot at getting?
I mean, that's the thing. That teams are flocking, or players, are flocking to the West.
Right, and that's why I don't buy the LeBron, effect in the East. And I think the bigger explanation has to do with these front offices. And it just so happens that a handful of the worst front offices in the league are in the East. The two that come to my mind almost immediately are the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks, right? Mm-hmm. Two horrible, horrible front offices. Mark Cuban pointed out this interesting theory in explaining, again, why has the West been so much stronger for the East? Not for 1 year or 2 years now, but for like 10 years. I think you said it to me earlier. Like, there's only been 4 different organizations in the East to win a title.
Championship since 2000.
Like, crazy. And what Mark Cuban basically said is, in the East, you have a lot of big market teams. You have, you just look along the coast. It's Miami,
New York, Brooklyn,
it's New York,
Miami, Boston.
Philadelphia. Exactly. And in the West, on the other hand, you have 7 of the 10 smallest markets in the league. And I kind of think what that leads to is, in the East, a little bit of complacency. You're a big market. You know you're going to draw fans. You know you're always going to get your foot in the door with a free agent. So these kind of front offices get a little sloppy, get a little lazy. Where on the other side of the things, you have smaller organizations in the West, and they have to work harder. If you're a Denver, if you're a Minnesota, you have to work harder to be relevant in the league as opposed to a New York.
I agree. I don't want to put Minnesota in the conversation of small market. Minneapolis is a big market. Not big like Brooklyn or New York or Miami, but it's a bigger market. I would agree with a Portland, Denver, San Antonio, Oklahoma City type situation, but you're completely right. These front offices, and the best example is James Dolan of the New York Knicks, run these teams to the ground, but they also think that they're going to be able to. It's kind of that sense of like, I gained weight studying abroad this semester, and it's like, oh, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose all that weight. It's more so like James Dolan to himself is thinking, oh, I'm gonna get these stars because I'm the Knicks. To me, it's like, oh, I'm going to lose this weight because I'm going to work out. It's a lot harder than you think.
You got to put in the work.
You got to put in the work, and he refuses to do so because he is the New York Knicks. He's going based off of the name, the brand name that I'm the New York Knicks and I can get these players.
We're going to get to the Knicks a little bit later, but you and I are definitely on the same page in that let's reward the front offices, make it a 1-16 playoffs, not an East and West thing, and that way that the teams in the front offices that are really doing the best job, that are acquiring the best players, that the stars that we really want to see, again, Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins weren't in the playoffs last year. That's a tandem I'd want to see. I mean, would they get rolled by the Golden State Warriors? Sure. But all right, point number 1, if Jeff and Garrett are running the league, we're scrapping the conference system. Point number 2, we have to fix tanking in the NBA. There is no reason why organizations like the Philadelphia 76ers, who tank year after year, should be rewarded by top picks in the NBA lottery draft. If NBA owners are asking fans to pitch in money to build them new stadiums, you saw it in Oklahoma City, right, with the Thunder leaving Seattle, You have to put a competitive team on the floor year after year. You just have to do it. There could be no way that we can accept these horrible franchises in the NBA. So how do we do it? That's the real question. It's easier said than done, again, to fix tanking. And I have a plan A and plan B, so I'm curious, Jeffrey, to see which one you like better. Plan A, you tell the worst two teams in the Plan A, you tell the worst two teams in the league every year, take a hike. You were horrible this year? Great. Take a year off and have some time to think about it. At the end of the day, what this is doing is you're giving these organizations time to reevaluate and think, okay, how can we be competitive next year? Because it's not acceptable to put a product on the court what we did this past season. In any other sport, putting together a horrible product year after year after year is unacceptable. College football, Les Miles, one of the most celebrated college football coaches of all time, he loses his job after a subpar year at LSU. The Philadelphia 76ers, they're god-awful for 5 years, and they're rewarded. We praise the Colangelos. I guess, what's his name, lost his job?
Sam Hinkie.
Sam Hinkie lost his job. But at the end of the day, we're praising this organization for being horrible. You look anywhere else, the NFL, you're not around after 2 years if you stink. The NFL, college football, college basketball, you're gone. We need to hold these organizations accountable. So that's plan A. Plan A, you tell them to take a year off. Listen to my plan B, and then we'll see which one you like better. Plan B, Pat Riley proposed this today. A 4-team playoff of the worst 4 teams in the NBA for the top pick in the NBA draft. That would be a lot of fun. By the way, I think that definitely draws higher ratings than the NIT tournament in college basketball. So again, plan A is you kick out the worst 2 teams in the league, make them think about their mistakes. They're losing a whole year of revenue. You're going to see a lot more competitive basketball across the league. Plan B, you make the worst 4 teams do a 4-team playoff for the number 1 pick in the draft, and I think that's one hell of a 4-game playoff.
So my thought process on A is you tell the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers, you're going to tell the Los Angeles Lakers to take a year off. They don't have a year of revenue. They have a year of not making money. Where can they get the money to better improve their team? Where do they get their money to say, okay, we didn't make a single dollar from revenue?
These owners are billionaires.
What does it also say to the players in the sense that, okay, guys, what player is going to want to play for a team that very well, we talked about the idea of free agents maybe not going to Philadelphia. What free agent would want to sign with a team that just, let's use the term, relegated?
Okay, what free agent is going to want to play for a team that willingly doesn't win games?
I understand the idea of a relegation system when there's another league to pull up from. So maybe if you want to pull up a team from the D League and see how that works and then just have the team take a year off and go to the D League, that could be something. Excuse me, the G League is now what it is called. But the idea of taking a team off and not having a replacement, if you had a replacement, I think it's a very viable idea. You just have to make the G League more of the NBA Division II, if that makes sense. You know how...
And that can go into our third point, which is, so again, our first one is scrap the conferences. Second one, let's fix tanking. And our third point is, let's stop the one-and-done rule in the NBA. What if you can parlay fixing tanking and stopping the one-and-done rule in one thing? Again, like you just said, you kind of build up the G League, which is, again, the NBA D League, and you say, all right, you 2 bad NBA franchises, you're going to play down for a year. And again, if you get rid of the one-and-done rule, you're going to see some really, really talented 18 and 19-year-olds playing in this G League. And again, maybe it's more of a farm system to the NBA. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
It's hard when talking about the G League and trying to do this. The idea of a relegation system, things like that won't happen because when you look at it in terms of a soccer team or a football team in Europe, let's use the English Premier League and the League One, for example, these stadiums, and the best part, I mean, there are still such fan bases for those smaller football teams to where, let's say the Austin Toros are... The Austin Toros and the Santa Cruz Warriors are the new 2 teams in the NBA. No one's gonna go to those games. I mean, they don't have the fan bases. They barely have a 5,000.
But why is anyone going to those games anyway? I mean, look, when LeBron James is in town, obviously all the Sixers fans over the last 3 years are coming to the stadium. But at the end of the day, no one wants to watch that team. This year, people are going to want to watch that team. Fine. Look at the Chicago Bulls this year. Like, they got Dwayne Wade, and then it's a mess.
Yeah, Garpax.
So let's recap. The In the Trenches NBA front office moves. We got 3. The first one, scrap the conferences. The second one, fix tanking, either through a 14 playoff or
that
kick it
14
out.
playoff is interesting. I didn't get to touch upon that, but
And number 3 was get rid of the one and done in the NBA. Either make players go to the G League or have them come straight to the NBA. And again, I think this also finishes college basketball. All right, we are going to take a brief break, and then we will be back with more NBA free agency. Again, this is In the Trenches. It is Monday afternoon. You're listening on KXSE.org or 1560 AM. We'll be back in just a couple seconds.
In the Trenches, back on the air. Jeffrey Dubroff, Garrett Schwartz with you on this beautiful Monday morning. July 10th. Summer's going by fast. Before you know it, it's going to be August 1st. College football players are going to be reporting to camp, or as my dad says, the best day of the year. Sorry, Mom. So we're going to play a quick game with you guys. Love or loathe, similar to a buy or sell situation. We're going to talk about NBA free agency, the biggest thing that anyone is talking about at the moment. The only thing anyone's talking about at the moment. And we're going to go through, we're going to talk about 10 signings that have been made in the NBA. Both Garrett and I are going to give our opinions on whether or not we love or loathe the signing, hence the name of the game. So we're going to start off. Dion Waiters and the Miami Heat signed a 4-year, $52 million contract. Dion Waiters averaged 15.8 points per game. Garrett, you are a Miami native. You are an avid Miami Heat fan. What's your take on this one?
I am a Miami Heat fan. I have not loved everything Miami's done in this offseason, but I do love the Dion Waiters move. In my opinion, he's a top 10 two-guard in the league at a position that's more scarce than any in the NBA right now. You know, you kind of look at the top. It's Jimmy Butler, Klay Thompson, and then it's kind of a big fall down. Dion Waiters, great grab for Miami. It kind of fits that culture great. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's a guy who bet on himself last year, gets a payday this year. I love this move for Miami. Again, 4 years, $52 million, not a whole lot of money. What do you think?
I love it, too. And you mentioned it. Dion Waiters is one of these gritty, tenacious type players that is a competitor and plays with a chip on his shoulder. 16 points a game on a Miami team, and you mentioned it. These 3-and-D type players that are becoming very rare in the NBA are very hard to come by. Dion Waiters is still young. He's 27 years old, has a lot of potential to be the guy in Miami that is desperately looking for that guy after the departure of Dwayne Wade. I like it, and you compare it to Tim Hardaway. You have it written down here. Tim Hardaway, 4 years, $71 million. Ugh. Terrible. I love it. Next, Rudy Gay signs a 2-year, $17 million contract with the San Antonio Spurs. I'll start this one out. I love this signing. And you can say, Jeffrey, what's it going to do to catch up the Golden State Warriors? We're not going to talk about that at the moment. What San Antonio has been missing since Tim Duncan left, so I guess what San Antonio was missing last year while Kawhi Leonard was averaging 25 a game and carrying the team on his back was another versatile scorer who could play the 4 and is also athletic. Danny Green is athletic, but he can only shoot the 3. When he drives in the lane, it's almost disastrous. LaMarcus Aldridge can't move around as like he used to. Rudy Gay is athletic. He's coming off of 18.7 points per game last season, and you say, Jeffrey, tore his Achilles. That's the Achilles heel of injuries. When it comes to managing injuries and managing their players, Greg Popovich does it better than anyone in the business. This guy is 19 points of offense that the Spurs desperately needed.
Yeah, it's really hard to argue about this one. The biggest one, obviously, to call out is the Achilles injury. It's one of the worst injuries you could have in the NBA. The other thing is, if you're looking at this San Antonio team, for the first time in a while, they're really not this old veteran team like they used to. They got a lot of young pieces, right? I mean, Kawhi Leonard's obviously their veteran guy. Manu's probably gone. Tony Parker, he's probably out the door. So I think Rudy Gay for $9-10 million a year, again, coming off an Achilles injury, but that's a good signing for San Antonio.
I'm very, very happy about it. I really am. Minnesota, I think, has made the biggest splash in the NBA offseason of any team. First, they get Jimmy Butler in that trade for Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn, and a couple of draft picks were exchanged. Now they signed 3 players. They signed Jamal Crawford, Jay Crossover, the 4-point play king, Jeff Teague, and our USC's own Taj Gibson. So, Garrett, take it away individually. I guess you can give an overall package, or you can go one by one.
Yeah, I'm just going to put the package together, and I'm just going to say love. And this is just an example, again, of one of those small market teams in the West doing everything they can to be relevant in this league. I mean, compare the Timberwolves to the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks are playing in the biggest media market in the NBA. The Timberwolves, you now add Jamal Crawford, Jeff Teague, and Taj Gibson. Great veteran players in the league to parlay with a young core of Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. It's hard not to love this deal. Again, you're providing the young core of Towns and Wiggins the pieces they need to really develop in this league. Don't forget, Jimmy Butler's on that team too. Maybe not this year, but 1 or 2 years from now, this team is going to be a real serious threat in the West.
Oh, absolutely. I love the package. The one deal I don't like from the package is the Jamal Crawford deal. 2 years, $8.9 million. I understand that's not a lot of money, relatively, for a guy who I think will be in the Hall of Fame as one of the best 6-man to ever play. Jamal Crawford, however, has seen his points production drop. He's going to be 37 this year, and I think it's one of those signings that, we got Jamal Crawford.
But it's $4 million a year.
No. I said that the money is great. The money is cheap. I just think it's one of those affection signings where it's like, we got him. Like, Jamal Crawford. Like, I don't expect Jamal Crawford to do much for this team. I think Jeff Teague is fantastic. I loved him on Atlanta. And Taj Gibson's one of my favorite players in the league. A gritty grinder, big down low, aggressive in the paint. I'm a huge fan of Taj Gibson. Next up.
So really quick, I'm just curious, where do you see the Timberwolves in the West next year? If you had to give a spot, are they a playoff team?
Oh, absolutely. It's playoff or bust already. And
so give a number.
They won't be top 3. I'd give 5. My top 4 teams, I guess, really quick, would be Golden State, San Antonio, Houston, and I'm going to say Oklahoma City. I'd follow that.
I totally agree, and then I totally agree with you there. Next,
you're not going to like this one. I saw you on Twitter. You texted me. You were not happy. Kelly Olynyk, 4 years, $50 million to the Miami Heat. Garrett, I'll let you go first. So you can talk about
very rare, by the way, that a restricted free agent, kind of leaves after his rookie deal. You saw the opposite case with Otto Porter this past week, making 4 years, $106 million. The Wizards being forced to re-sign him. I mean, look, the Olynyk deal, I know you're going to make the argument that he's a culture fit. He's kind of this gritty guy. He's also a big man that could space the floor. But at the end of the day, look, Pat Riley's a ticking time clock. He only has so many more years with the organization left, and what that means is he's looking to make a big splash in the next 1, 2, 3 years. And if you're kind of looking at the Miami Heat's payroll over the next few seasons, I just have a problem giving a guy $15 million who didn't even start last season. Is only playing 20 minutes a game. He's not even averaging double digits of offense. So I think it's just too much money for a guy that doesn't make a big enough impact.
Yeah, we agree on that. I think it's a lot of money for a guy who averaged just 9 points per game. But I do like the way he fits into the culture. He's gritty, he's hardworking, and the guy can shoot the ball, and he spreads the floor around. I think Miami's a playoff team next year.
I mean, I'd hope so. They were almost a playoff team last year, losing the tiebreaker
I think
to Chicago.
Miami's a 45, maybe even 50-win team. I like Eric Spoelstra, but I don't like the sign just because of the money. I like the player. I think the money is outlandish.
Agreed.
That is just me. Moving on, Nick Young, Swaggy P, Mr. Young, Golden State Warriors get him for 1 year, $5.2 million. This is interesting, and I think you and I are splitting hairs on this one. We're split.
Yeah, I loathe this one, and I just can't understand why you're bringing Nick Young and the baggage that he is in the locker room into your organization. Look, 2 of the 15 position players right now, or actually everyone's a position player in the NBA, but 2 of the 15 guys in the roster for Golden State are JaVale McGee and Nick I don't care how well-oiled your locker room is.
Has JaVale McGee re-signed yet?
I'm That's a good point, but I've read that he's leaning toward re-signing. So
I
not
would
official
imagine
yet,
so.
but it's a serious possibility. And look, at the end of the day,
when they were on Washington together, it was a nightmare. Sorry.
And at the end of the day, look, you could argue Nick Young is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. He adds depth to the Warriors, but there are a lot of guys who could shoot the three in the NBA. And when Iggy Azalea is the biggest thing kind of associated with you as a player the last 2 years, I'm like, why do I really want this guy in my locker room? Loathe.
I disagree. I understand the locker room issue is scary just because of the fact that when you're putting a guy like Nick Young who had those issues and you're replacing him with and you're pairing him up with Draymond Green, who also can be an outspoken individual, but Ian Clark is not on this team anymore. Ian Clark had 6.8 points per game, was a 37% three-point shooter. You're replacing that with Nick Young off the bench, 13 points per game and 40% from three-point range. That's a great pickup, and that's going to be a culture change. I think you see guys like when they go, and I saw it on Coward, or not on Colin Coward, I saw it on Skip Bayless's show. Would you ever have seen Randy Moss as a New England Patriot? Would Randy Moss have ever fit into Bill Belichick's system? Once you get into this locker room and you see how serious Steve Kerr is, and yes, there's clowning around amongst the guys, but they are in there to win basketball games. They don't clown around. I think Nick Young will find his niche in there, and he'll fit in. I think Steve Kerr, doesn't. I know he doesn't take that type of stuff.
I think another great example of that is James Johnson and Deion Waiters in Miami last year. Again, taking small contracts. They proved themselves after kind of a wishy-washy years beforehand, getting their paydays. I could see the case for Nick Young. Not my favorite signing.
I think it'll be interesting. I think coming off the bench, he's an unbelievable shooter with a team that already has a lot. Moving on, another Western Conference team. These Western Conference teams are just busy as bees. The Sacramento Kings signed Zach Randolph and George Hill. Randolph 2 years, 24. George Hill 3 years, $57 million. And I forgot, Air Canada going to go out to the California capital. 1 year, $8 million.
Yeah, I think I'll just take this one for me and you. I think, this Sacramento roster looks really, really strange right now. I mean, it's like you have your young guys, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Justin Jackson, and you're kind of parlaying that again with these vets, Vince Carter, Zach Randolph, and we just said George Hill. I love it, again, because you're adding veteran guys. Awesome veteran. Could you imagine learning from Zach Randolph for 1-2 years? Sacramento knows they're not in win-now mode. Nothing's happening in the next 1-2-3 years. But for the short term, again, to help develop those young guys, I love this move. I think we both love this move.
I love it. Also, I want to comment on this really quick. But depending on the strides that Buddy Hield and a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein can make in the offseason, I mean, Zach Randolph, George Hill, Vince Carter, that could fight for an 8 spot. That could fight for an 8 spot. I'm not saying it will, but it could just because the West is so deep. Denver's in there. Portland's in there. New Orleans is in there.
Regardless, credit to Sacramento for putting a fun team on the court.
Absolutely, and Dave Yeager's an incredible coach. Moving on, Toronto, the only team from the Great White North, re-signs Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka, both re-signing. 3 years, $100 million for Kyle Lowry. 3 years, $65 million for Serge Ibaka. I loathe this.
Why?
I think Kyle Lowry, does not show up in the playoffs. I don't loathe the decision to re-sign them. I loathe Kyle Lowry. Because all you've been hearing for the past year and a half, 2 years is, all he wants is a ring. He's leaving Toronto. All he wants is a ring. He's leaving Toronto. And then he saw that his market was not that big because he realized
3 years, $100 million. That's not that much money.
For the same team. He realized, I haven't shown up in the past 2 playoffs that I've been in. And I'm also 32 years old, and I'm not getting any younger. I'm the same age as Chris Paul right now, and Chris Paul has done a lot more in his career. I have nowhere to go. I think the Serge Ibaka deal is a little too much for a guy who has just not been as productive as he was when he was on that Oklahoma City team. It's not my favorite, but I understand it.
Okay, I'm going to say, I like this one, and the reason being that if you look at the Eastern Conference, it's the Cavs, it's the Celtics, and then it's the Toronto Raptors. And at the end of the day, by bringing back Ibaka and Lowry, it gives this team by far a better chance than they would have had otherwise in the East. And I think, look, Are they going to beat the Cavs? I don't know. Are they going to beat the Celtics? Probably not. But, if you're Cleveland year 4 of the LeBron round 2, I think those players are tired. They're fatigued. What happens if Kyrie Irving goes down? Does Toronto have a chance? Again, I just like the move because Toronto stays in the conversation.
2 more. We're going to go J.J. Redick signs 1 year, $23 million with the Philadelphia 76ers. Trusting the process is what he said on Twitter. Garrett, love or loathe?
Look, Philadelphia's got to find, somewhere to spend their money. In this case, it's J.J. Redick, $23 million on a 1-year deal. We've talked about this before, how important it is to bring in veteran players to kind of groom these younger players. And I think if you're Philadelphia at this point, that's really, really important. So I love this signing.
Is J.J. Redick really the veteran player you want grooming your players? A guy who hasn't done much.
It's better than no one.
In a deep run of play. No, I agree. I love it for J.J. Redick. He gets out of a volatile situation in Los Angeles and gets himself a $23 million year. I think it's too much money for a guy who I think benefited from circumstance, had one of the best point guards in the league who was able to dish him the ball. I think he's going to find his situation a bit different in terms of how he gets the ball in Philadelphia. Final one. Gordon Hayward, the biggest one of all. He wrote the Players Tribune where he said, "It took me a long time to think about this," while he was writing his Players Tribune article.
He wrote 3 essays, supposedly. 3 beautifully crafted 1,800-word essays.
Butler University essays. 4 years, $128 million.
Yikes. I'm going to say I loathe this one, and I'll tell you why. 1 week ago, right after the deal, I was itching to have a show, and I was ready to come on and be like, man, this Boston team is going to beat Cleveland this year, and I'll tell you why. You look at they have Horford, Olynyk, Bradley, Smart, and you add Hayward, Isaiah Thomas. I'm like, man, this team, they've got the firepower. They're going to go against a tired Cleveland team. Again, I'm comparing year 4 of LeBron in Cleveland to year 4 of LeBron in Miami. The roster, just at the end of the day, they're more tired. They're more prone to injuries. I'm like, man, this is going to be Boston's chance. But 1 week later, to make room for Hayward, you got to get rid of Avery Bradley, who's your best defender, and Kelly Olynyk, who's your best big man. And now I'm saying, wait, is this Boston team really any better? And I think the answer is no. So I don't like this signing. Look, Boston had to do something. It's about time Danny Ainge put his money where his mouth is. But I just don't think this brings them that much closer, if not at all closer, to Cleveland. Thoughts, Jeff?
Danny Ainge saved his job with this. I told you, I texted you, I said if they somehow didn't get Gordon Hayward, I think they would have had to fire him. I really think they would have. I like it because I think it gives Isaiah Thomas. I understand that you're losing Olynyk and Bradley, so you're getting 22 points per game and you're losing 26. I think it gives Isaiah Thomas a wing that can score. I watched about 15 minutes, 20 minutes of highlights on Gordon Hayward, and the guy can attack the rim, and I understand he wasn't the guy they gave it to in the clutch, but he's a guy who can attack the rim. He is a very good, smart basketball player, great basketball IQ. I think he's another offensive threat, but do I think he's enough for them to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers? Absolutely not.
We both agree. Great player. They kind of gave up a little bit too much to get him.
I agree. We will be back in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. In about 10 minutes, we're going to have Russell Simon on the air, a former USC student, worked at the NBA, and now working at Snapchat in their NBA department. He's going to come on. We're going to have some good questions to ask him, talk NBA, NBA free agency, and our always favorite segment, The Blitz. We'll have that and more when we return.
And we are back. This is In the Trenches. I'm Garrett Schwartz. With me is Jeffrey Dubrov. We've got about 5 minutes to spend on a segment before we bring on our guest, Russell Simon. And we're going to talk about, again, the NBA parity problems in the league. But I think it's for a different reason than most people are thinking. Everyone likes to point the finger at Kevin Durant for joining the super team Golden State Warriors. And everyone likes to point their finger at LeBron James for starting the Big Three era in Miami and bringing the parade to Cleveland. But I really think we need to be pointing the finger at these really, really bad organizations in the NBA. And you have a couple really good examples of really, really bad front offices. Look, I can't stomach the fact that Tim Hardaway, a guy who a year ago was playing in the NBA G League, D League, whatever you want to call it, just got a payday of 4 years, $71 million from the Knicks. I can't stomach the fact that a guy like Otto Porter is signed to a max offer sheet by the Brooklyn Nets for 4 years, $106 million. And again, Washington's got to shoot themselves in the foot in order to match the deal. I can't stomach the fact that the Portland Trailblazers had the largest salary cap in the NBA this season when they might not even be a playoff team. They're paying Alan Crabb $18.5 million this season, as well as Evan Turner $17 million this season. They both have 3 more years left, around $55 million. Now look, how are we going to point the finger at Kevin Durant and LeBron James when these organizations like the Portland Trailblazers, like the Knicks, like the Nets, are just abominably bad, like so bad. They are the reason for the NBA parity problems in the league. Jeff, what do you think of what do you think of the Knicks? What do you think of the Nets? Talk about these bad front offices.
The Nets are on a better track, I think, than the New York Knicks, but I think anyone could be on a better track than the New York Knicks.
Well, the New York Knicks aren't even on it. I don't even know what track they're on.
Sean Marks is doing work. He's got Damari Carroll and a couple of future draft picks, so that he knows what he's trying to do. And I think Otto Porter, the fact that he can shoot threes, and your boy Colin Cowherd touched on it a little bit, the reason he's getting paid that much is because he can shoot threes. I'm not a big fan of Otto Porter, but I can understand it for a team like Brooklyn who's just trying to find scoring. New York, by the way, I mean, oh my
So I'm going to go out on a limb here. And we were talking about this before.
4 years, $71 million to a guy who was in the NBA G League last year. Jonathan Simmons, similar type of guy. He's going to make $7 million this year, which is a lot of money. I'm not saying it's not.
So, Jeff, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I really do not think it's that much of a limb, but I'm going to say the New York Knicks are the worst franchise of our generation. And I'll tell you why. You watch Isaiah Thomas come in and Isaiah Thomas come out. You watch Phil Jackson come in and Phil Jackson come out. And now you're trying to bring in someone else to turn around the organization. And the word on the street is David Griffin out for consideration as Knicks GM because the Knicks and David Griffin couldn't agree on a basketball role. Now, at this point, if you can't figure out that someone, an autonomous individual, needs to be making basketball decisions for the New York Knicks and not James Dolan, wow. Because I can't look at their last their 3 biggest moves in the last 2 years. Hardaway, Derrick Rose, and Joakim Noah. Now, funny story about Joakim Noah. Joakim Noah supposedly has been going around to hotels in West L.A., and instead of paying the valet and the waiters money for tips, he's been handing out bags of weed. Look, that organization is just a mess. And look, they're not doing this in Minnesota. They're not doing this in Phoenix. This is in New York City.
Yeah.
That organization, they haven't even been relevant in the last 3 decades in New York City. Look, I'm a Miami Heat fan, and that's because I grew up for the last up until I was 15 years old. But I grew up, I didn't watch a single Knicks game. They're not even watchable. So, Jeff, I say Knicks, worst organization in the league of our generation. Yay or nay?
It's got to be the Cleveland Browns. And I understand there's a difference between the markets there. Cleveland, since the year 2000, has had 9 coaches. Since 2000, they've had 24 starting quarterbacks. And since 2000, 2 winning seasons. And it's not getting any brighter from here. I mean, that's an organization, and I can't say that New York situation's any brighter, but I mean, it's like comparing apples to oranges almost.
It's just, I mean, I feel like the Browns just haven't caught a break in the sense, like, whenever they have the top pick, they're not, you know.
It's a bust.
They don't have the opportunity to take the number 1 franchise quarterback on the board. But, like, the Knicks, they're dishing out the money. They just, man, they got no clue what they're doing. All right, we're again going to break because we're going to be bringing on our guest, Russell Simon, in just a minute. You are listening to In the Trenches. I am Garrett Schwartz. With me is Jeffrey Dubrov, and we will be back shortly.
And we are back on the air. Our guest now with us, former KXSC sports director, called many games for USC football, USC basketball. I actually had the pleasure of doing the color commentating during this year's Rose Bowl. It is Russell Simon. Russell, how are you today?
What an intro, Jeff. Miss you, man. It's great to be back on the airways. Excited to be on. How's it going?
Doing great. Garrett and I are here. We've been talking a lot of NBA basketball just because, not much else to talk about, right, Garrett?
Not that much to talk about, but Russell, we're going to bring you in right now into the In the Trenches NBA front office. That is, if Garrett and Jeff took over Adam Silver's job for a day, a year, what would the first three things we would do to fix the league? And the reason we're talking about this is, again, Mavericks owner Mark Cuban coming out and saying if the Mavs are playing in the Eastern Conference, they'd be a playoff team right now, not rebuilding. And the fact of the matter is, after this, after these big moves that we've seen in NBA free agency, the parity problems between the East and the West, or in the league in general, are kind of nightmarish. So we're going to go through right now. We're going to give you the three things that we thought we needed to do to fix the league. You're going to buy or sell on each one of them. You ready?
Okay.
All right, take number one. Jeff and I want to get rid of conferences in the NBA. Let's scrap the East and West, scrap the 1 through 8 thing that's going on, and just make it 1 through 16, seed the playoffs that way. Let's see the best stars of the best teams and reward the organizations with the smart front offices in the NBA. What's your take?
Buy with caveats. In theory, if they could do it, I think it would make sense. But, you have to think logistically. Like, you need some teams can't be flying all over the country to play all these games. They have the divisions and things like that for a reason. And, with 82 games, even with your off days, it's very, they're playing a lot. That being said, would it be better if you could see the playoffs, 1 through 16, just have them all go at it that way? Definitely. Conferences are pretty arbitrary, just depending on kind of geography. And I think it'd be great if they could, seed at least the playoffs just 1 through 16 and just let the best team, come out. The finals probably would have still been Cleveland and, the Warriors, but you could have potentially had, more Western Conference teams just go, further. And I'm sure a lot of people would have rather seen, the Thunder or the Spurs play later on than, see potentially Boston or Washington.
So you bring up fair points. Geography kind of plays a factor, although there are some flaws in the league. You have teams like New Orleans and Memphis playing in the West when they're probably closer to the East. Let me ask a question now. If LeBron James goes west next summer, either to a Lakers or a San Antonio, do you change your mind then?
You got to think about it. It's bigger than one, kind of player in one moment in time. They'd want to, do it where it would be, for
if
decades. If
LeBron James goes west, you're talking like
a pretty radical, restructuring. But I would love to see it. If LeBron goes west, I just think the best team should, be able to play, the furthest. And just because you're in the West doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to, be in the playoffs if you have a better record than some of the bad teams in the East.
It's a precarious situation for the NBA. Next thing we decided there needed to be some sort of punishment for tanking, whether it be that the bottom two teams in the league are somewhat relegated, and Garrett had the idea of having a 4-team playoff for the number 1 pick. What are your thoughts on the idea of coming up with a punishment for tanking?
Disagree with. Is tanking a problem as presently constructed, Garrett? Like, what is the big... Would you rather have a team, just be mediocre and, pretty bad and win, 25 games, or, win 10 games and potentially, get the number 1 pick?
So
the way the whole NBA is set up, it incentivizes teams being really bad. So
here's my problem.
That?
My problem is these NBA billionaire owners asking fans to pull out their taxpayers' money to build them new stadiums when more often than not, these same owners aren't putting out products on the court that are watchable. And I think these organizations and these front offices and these owners have to be held accountable. You can't raise season ticket prices. You can't ask fans to put in money to build a new stadium when you're not even doing your job. That's my argument.
an ideal world, yes, that is correct. But, in order to be very good in the NBA, you need, unless you're getting free agents, you need, the top 1 or 2 picks in the draft. And the only way to get that as presently constructed is, to tank. And look where it's gotten Philly as opposed to a team that just, is consistently mediocre like the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, I have some strong
for
takes.
A couple of years if you have a good vision. It is one way to turn it around. However, tanking in general, is a problem, and I really like the idea of that 14 playoff for the number 1 pick. There are ways you can reward teams for winning and competing even when they're bad, and, having something like that to get the number 1 pick would certainly be really, something that would be really entertaining.
So, Russ, I was talking to Garrett before the show, and I didn't get to bring it up. When it comes to the 14 playoff, I have one problem with it. So, say you have the Sixers, the Celtics.
I wouldn't throw the Celtics there now, but
the Sixers, the Lakers, the Nets, whoever is in this 14 playoff, and you say, all right, guys, let's win this game so we can get the number 1 pick. TJ McConnell, I want you to go out there, give your best effort so we can get this number 1 pick. Who's going to take your job? And TJ McConnell is sitting there, is like, so I'm going to go out and compete to win this game so I can draft an 18-year-old to take my spot. I just don't think that's feasible.
I mean, that's one of I think, really the big problem with it. The players, that's not really like an incentive for them at all.
Yeah, they don't care about it.
Hard, and obviously you want to be professional and you want to compete, but at the same time, you do players who would be kind of playing themselves right out of a job, and I worry about whether they'd be able to, get up for games like that when you have ownership and the coaches doing one thing, but the players may not necessarily have their hearts in it.
Right. Okay, so, again, getting rid of the conferences, you agree, kind of a good idea, not realistic. Fixing tanking, you also agree, sounds, easier said than done. All right, point number 3. Jeff and I want to get rid of the one-and-done rule in the NBA, whether that means expanding the NBA G League or the formerly the NBA D League, or whether that just means, you got to play another extra year in college. What are your thoughts on, again, eliminating the one-and-done rule in the
NBA?
NBA?
I think Commissioner, Jeff and Garrett are off to a hot start with these 3, and this is an idea that realistically probably will be changed in the near future, and probably should be. I mean, there's no point in guys going to college for 6 months and just kind of like Ben Simmons in LSU, where he doesn't even care, and it's ridiculous to have him go. Whereas you have guys in the G League now who are making. I read a thing that former G League players made $275 million in contract money so far this free agency. So I think, does your average 17, 18-year-old benefit more, and keep in mind, these are going to be NBA players, hope, if they play their cards right, does that prospect benefit more from playing against pro-level competition in the G League or, taking biology 101 at USC or LSU? They benefit more from being in the G League. It's something that they should change, and, it's certainly not to have them spend more time in the NCAA making their university and making the NCAA money and not, helping the NBA at all. I think you can develop way more in the G League, and I'd love to see the NBA, change the rule here where you can do, which, they already have. You can join the G League, I think, and then play in the NBA, but they, should definitely encourage that.
Great points. All right, Commissioner Russell Simon, we're putting you on the spot. You got 10 seconds to think of an answer. If you had one change as commissioner, what would it be?
Move the Clippers to Seattle.
Not a bad idea at all. All right, Jeff, you ready?
I am. I don't know if Russell is, but I am.
Come on, Jeff. I've been in the hot seat before.
So, once again, it's my favorite segment. It is the Blitz. Russell, I'm going to ask you about 10 questions. You're going to have to answer these 10 questions in 5 seconds or less. Some are sports related. Others may have something to do with USC culture, USC life. So I know you graduated and you're an old man now, but we'll see if you can keep up. So we'll start. Are you ready? Are you ready? You there, Russ? You ready?
Yep.
All right, we'll start right away. Who is tonight's home run derby champion?
Oh, Aaron Judge.
Who is USC's football secret weapon outside of Sam Darnold?
Quan Hampton and the wide receivers.
Ooh.
I haven't heard that one.
I haven't heard that at all. Clay Helton, buy or sell?
Not only buy, get a timeshare, get a mortgage.
Clay Helton without Sam Darnold, buy or sell?
Yeah.
Blaze or Pizza Studio?
Blaze, not even. It's offensive that question was just asked.
Woo!
But 800 degrees is better than all.
You know, we always put that in halfway to see.
800 degrees tastes like cardboard.
We put that in halfway to see if we keep you on the show.
Great, man. You got. Because here's the thing: you don't go cheap. The secret is you don't go like much. You don't go with like the all cheese. You only go like margarita, and then you get them to put the mozzarella and like break it up and put them on your pie. Delicious.
He is from New York. He knows his pizzas. The worst sporting event you've had to witness in your fanhood career for your teams?
Like worst individual game, or
like for myself is Ray Allen hitting the game 6-3 to beat the or to tie the game against the Spurs.
Okay, I was at the butt fumble, which was a real low point for me in my life as a Jet fan.
Oh, the butt fumble.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
Childhood sports hero.
I was the Jets and Knicks fans. There were none.
You have to have one. Stephen Marbury?
Marbury was horrible for the Knicks.
Yeah,
they won like 20 games, and he almost got arrested for doing things as an intern.
By the way, what does that say about New York?
Chad Pennington, I guess, begrudgingly.
Oh,
man. Go-to drink.
Morbid, man.
Next one, go-to drink at the 9-0. I know, again, you won't be there anymore, but go-to drink at the 9-0.
I guess I'm not allowed to come. That's true. I'm not allowed to come anymore. Maybe like tomorrow night. See? But I think after you get a summer grace period, right, Jeff?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, AMF. Come on.
Same person last week, or the person we had last week said the same thing. Backyard baseball.
What else do people get at the 9-0?
Whatever the drink of the night is, in my opinion. $5 for that drink.
True.
$5 for that drink.
Yeah. But that's a cop-out, though.
Yeah. Backyard baseball or backyard football?
Pablo Sanchez, backyard baseball.
Great call. Is Sam Darnold going to be the quarterback of USC in the 2018 season, or is he going to the pros?
He's going to be the quarterback of the New York Jets.
Wow.
I think Darnold might stay in college knowing he'd be going to the Jets.
I think he would, too.
See, yeah, I'm worried about that. He probably should. That would be as a Jet fan, that would be what I would recommend.
So, final question here. The projected Russell Simon guaranteed 2017 USC football record.
I think undefeated, and then a loss in the first round of the college football playoff.
All right. I like it. Russ, that was the
I feel
blitz.
like that's where they should be.
I think so, too. I think you're right. I have lots of confidence. I think Sam Darnold is a machine. I think he's going to be great. I have one more question now off the blitz. Who is your biggest free agent winner this year before we let you go?
For the NBA?
For the NBA.
I really like Oklahoma City. They turned themselves from a team with kind of, a middling, kind of no hope, for the future. They were just kind of ride it out with Westbrook, to a team that could really make some moves. And getting George is really, the impact of that's just kind of
and do you think he stays?
Huge for them. I mean, it really changes kind of the whole makeup and direction of that franchise if they can kind of put it together. If he stays. If he leaves, then, you're really back to square one. But I like the move considering what they gave up.
And do you think he's going to stay?
I think a lot of it depends on how he gels with Westbrook and how the team does. That's an impossible question to answer at this point.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Russell, for coming on. It was a pleasure. Glad to get your NBA takes, and, of course, glad to hear you're taking Blaze over Pizza Studio.
Glad to hear you're doing well,
Anytime.
Russ.
Thank you. All right. We have one more segment before we leave you this week. Tomorrow is the MLB All-Star game. It's, by the way, the first year, I don't know if you knew this, Jeff, the first year in the MLB All-Star game in a while where it will not be deciding home field advantage for the World Series. So definitely takes out an element of excitement and surprise.
I like it. I like when they do that. I think it makes it exciting.
You know what?
I think it makes it.
You like it until your team is playing in the World Series, and you're like, man, we had the best record in baseball, and we don't have home field advantage because of the All-Star game.
There's a good shot that the teams playing in the World Series this year are going to be equal in record. Both the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Although,
I'm confident the Dodgers will blow it.
We both foresee a Dodgers first-round exit.
Of course. So we're going to change it up a little bit. We are going to introduce to you the In the Trenches All-Star Juicers lineup. Now, when I say juicers and I'm talking about baseball, I know what you're probably thinking. Steroids, the long ball, is Aaron Judge juicing? Obviously not.
No, of course not.
Of course not.
That guy's a man.
But we're not talking about juicers in that regard. We're talking about juicers alcohol-related. Who are our 5 biggest alcoholic all-stars across all of sports? Jeff, you want to kick this one off? Number 1 for the In the Trenches Juicers All-Star team.
Where is this list? I have it somewhere.
I'll give you a hint. He's a former USC coach.
It's going to go to our favorite coach, Steve Sarkisian.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Who I first want to say congratulations to him getting better and finding himself in a very good job. Now the offensive coordinator at Atlanta. But who can forget the Troy banquet dinner where he slipped off the rails a little bit, said some profanities. But, hey, he's turned himself around.
I mean, my thing about Sarkisian was he was a winner when he was drinking. That 55-point slaughtering we had against Arizona State, he was supposedly hammered. I mean, he could clearly do the job on juice, off juice. All right, number 1, Steve Sarkisian. Number 2, I'm going to say Tiger Woods. Like, man, this guy's just been doing some impressive stuff behind the wheel.
Man.
Although this past time it apparently wasn't alcohol, it was painkillers. A few years back, crashing into a tree because his wife was chasing him while having an affair. Tiger Woods just killing it while juicing. Number 3, who you got, Jeff?
I'm going to put down Ryan Lochte, and this is because it's just so notable, the incident of the faking of the robbery from the gas station story that just completely blew up in his face. Ryan Lochte.
And then when he goes to win Dancing with the Stars right after that,
Ryan Lochte is one of a kind, man. What a story. What a fake story to make up. Talk about fake news.
Number 4, Go Crisp, the outfielder for MLB, and I'm going to just tell this story, a little bit of a caveat, but he was pulled over for a DUI while driving his $400,000 2009 Rolls-Royce Phantom. Man, if you're juicing and you're driving, talk about a better way to go down in style. Coco Crisp, congratulations. You're 4th on the In the Trenches All-Star Juicers lineup. Number 5, Jeffrey, who we got?
You know what they say? I mean, you never party before games, right? You're not supposed to party before a meeting and
unless you're Johnny Manziel.
Or unless you're Donovan McNabb, who is partying before the Super Bowl when they lost to the New England Patriots. That's number 5. Who parties before the Super Bowl? He and Terrell Owens party before the Super Bowl.
So we got Sark, Tiger Woods, Ryan Lochte, Coco Crisp, and Donovan McNabb. Congratulations. You will be receiving your In the Trenches Juicers All-Star trophies in the mail within the next week or so. That is all we got for this week on In the Trenches.
What a show. That was a good one, Garrett.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, we'll be back next Monday at noon. You're listening on KXSC.org or on 1560 AM. I'm Garrett Schwartz. With me is Jeffrey Dubrov. We will see you next week when, it's going to be more NBA.
I really hope not.
See ya.